A steady rain was falling as he loaded the crate into the passenger side of a sleek new Model A Roadster. "Whatever you do, don't listen to it," Stevens pleaded as he stood in the rain getting drenched. "God never intended man to be able to." The Model A's engine roared to life, drowning out his last words. "Talk to the dead." The car sped away, down the long driveway, past the manicured hedges and into the dark and stormy night. It had a full tank of gas, and the serious-looking man behind the wheel knew he had a long drive ahead of him. His name was Flanagan, and he had been up for the last 32 hours. He had flown from Detroit to New Jersey in a company tri-motor on explicit orders from the old man himself. The car was waiting for him at the Newark airfield, and he had driven through the rain and got to Edison's mansion first thing that morning. Or was it afternoon? It was all a blur. Flanagan shook off the brain fog and squeezed the steering wheel with both hands. No time to think about sleep now. The storm had canceled his return flight, and his new orders were to drive directly back once the items were in his hands. If all went well, he would be home for dinner. The rain was coming down in sheets, and Flanagan strained to keep his eyes on the road as he barreled through the pitch-black Jersey countryside. It wasn't safe to be out driving on a night like tonight, but what else could he do? He was known in the company as a man you could trust to get things done, no matter the danger. Besides, he would do anything for the old man. Hell, he would still be back in Corktown, busting heads for a quarter a pop if it wasn't for him. If he was honest, the boss was more of a father to him than his real old man. The mere thought of his drunk, no good dad, made Flanagan cringe. "You ain't nuttin' but a two-bit hood," he could still hear him say. 2 years in the ground and the man still drove him mad. Flanagan turned on the radio hoping to find some music, but the storm had other ideas. The airwaves were filled with static as he searched up and down the dial for a signal. Finally, persistence paid off, and he was able to tune into KDKA out of Pittsburgh. Sometimes on stormy nights like this, a radio signal bounces around the atmosphere like a pool ball looking for a pocket. Thanks to the thunderstorm, the distant station was coming in loud and clear, and Flanagan was happy to have the music of Tommy Dorsey to keep him company. There were no other cars out tonight, and he had the road all to himself. The solitude suited Flanagan just fine. He did his best work alone. If he had a partner, he would be forced to sit through miles and miles of conversation. Small talk, chit-chat, no thank you. Actions speak louder than words, that's what he was taught. Good advice when you grow up in a 3-room tenement apartment with 9 brothers and sisters. You need more than talk to survive. The only words that meant anything to him growing up were his mother's. Every night after working a 12-hour day scrubbing floors, she found the energy to read her children a bedroom story in a brogue so thick you could cut it like soda bread. Flanagan's eyes got moist thinking of his ma, a saint of a woman. He wished he could have been by her bedside when she passed to hear her tender voice one last time. Flanagan caught himself getting mushy and tried to think of something besides his dear, dead mother. Like the big fat bonus check he would get when he got back to Detroit. The old man was obsessed with the occult and paid top dollar for strange and bizarre artifacts. He had recently shelled out a small fortune to obtain the chair Lincoln was sitting in at Ford's Theater the night he got shot, convinced it was haunted by the ghost of the dead president. Flanagan could only assume that Edison's last breath and the so-called spirit phone would be prized pieces to add to his collection. Even if the spirit phone was nothing more than a bunch of wires and tubes, to think Edison's sniveling assistant Stevens actually thought that hunk of junk worked. A bolt of lightning suddenly streaked across the sky and struck a nearby oak tree. Sparks flew like fireworks, and a large branch came crashing down onto the pavement. Flanagan swerved the car and narrowly missed hitting it. He turned his head to look back when he heard a faint voice say, "Keep your eyes on the road." An icy shiver shot down Flanagan's spine. He spun around thinking someone might have snuck into the back seat, but there was no one there. It wasn't the radio either. That's when he heard a low humming sound coming from inside the crate. He glanced over at the wooden box, pulled off the top, and took a look inside. 2 cathode tubes on the back of the strange-looking device were glowing orange. Somehow the spirit phone had come to life. A man like Flanagan doesn't scare easy, not when you've seen and done the things he had in his life.
Still, there was something about the strange-looking contraption that was beginning to give him the creeps. It was the same breathless feeling he got as a kid when his Nana told her ghost stories. His grandmother was from the old country and held fast to its superstitions and folklore. She was convinced there were evil spirits in the night that would steal your soul if you were sinful. Flanagan smirked at the thought. He didn't believe in evil spirits. Dead is dead after all. Then again, the damn thing was built by Edison himself. If anyone could bridge the astral plane, it was him. Another flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a crash of thunder. Goosebumps appeared on Flanagan's arms. "Who's there?" he asked, half joking. Bracing for an answer, all he heard was rain bouncing off the Model A's canvas roof. Now he was feeling foolish for letting his mind play tricks on him. He leaned over to put the top back on the crate when there was a sharp crackle of static and he heard a man's voice say, "Look out." Flanagan looked up just in time to see something standing in the middle of the road. He slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The Model A skidded across the wet pavement, hit the object head-on, and then came to a screeching stop. It all happened in the blink of an eye, and it took a moment for Flanagan to get his bearings. He slowly got out of the car and surveyed the damages. There was a dent in the hood and blood splattered on the grill. "Damn it," he cursed, sure he had hit a deer. That's when he saw a body lying on the gravel shoulder. It was a young man, no more than 20, most likely a drifter by the looks of his shabby clothes and worn-out shoes. "Help me," the kid said, gurgling up blood. "Please, help me." Flanagan wandered over, hands in pocket. A cold rain was falling. "What the hell were you doing in the middle of the road at this time of night?" he asked, angry by the sudden inconvenience. "What are you doing?" the kid asked, wincing in pain. Flanagan stood still as a statue, thinking about what to do next. He could help the young man, but that would take time and would no doubt get complicated. Or he could drive away like nothing happened. There were no other cars coming or farmhouse in sight. They were on a desolate stretch of road in the dead of night. Flanagan looked over at the mangled body and came to his conclusion. The kid wouldn't make it through the night. "What are you doing?" the young man mumbled, half delirious, as Flanagan dragged him to the side of the road and nestled him in some wet grass hidden from view. "I'm going to get help," Flanagan lied. "I'm bleeding, mister, at least put something on my wound," the kid pleaded. Flanagan made the sign of the cross and got back in his car. "Damn you to hell, you bastard," he heard the young man say before starting the engine and driving away. Flanagan was no altar boy, and had done some bad things before, but leaving the boy by the side of the road tore him up inside. He convinced himself he didn't have a choice. The old man was counting on him, and the sooner he made his delivery the better. Flanagan looked at the spirit phone out of the corner of his eye. "You're hearing things, Flanagan," he mumbled to himself. He took a flask out of his coat pocket and took a swig. The whiskey burned going down and sharpened his resolve. There was a job to do, and he was damn well going to do it. After a few more miles, Flanagan began to relax. "Just keep your eyes on the road and everything will be all right," he thought to himself. That's when he saw the flashing lights in the rear view mirror. The New Jersey State Trooper got out of his cruiser, adjusted his wide-brimmed hat to keep the rain out of his face, and approached the Model A with caution. "Kinda late for a drive, isn't it?" he asked when he got to the driver's side window. "Got a long way to go," Flanagan replied. The trooper took a step back and looked the car over. Flanagan thought he seemed a little too suspicious and reached for the pistol tucked under his seat. "Sure is a beautiful car. It's a roadster, right?" "Yes, sir," Flanagan answered. "Top speed." "The book says 65 miles per hour, but I've gone faster," Flanagan bragged. "Good thing you're not a bank robber," the trooper joked as he walked around to the front of the car. "Your front left headlight is out," he shouted. "There's also a dent in the hood and you've got some blood on the grill." "Oh yeah, I hit a deer a ways back," Flanagan said. "Damn thing jumped right out in front of me. The trooper came back and shined a light into the back seat as if he was looking for something. It wasn't uncommon for bootleggers to make their runs at this time of night in fast cars just like this one. "I'm gonna have to see some identification," the trooper asked. Flanagan reached inside his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He handed his license to the trooper, who gave it the once-over. "Michigan. You're a long way from home, Mr. Flanagan." "I'm on a work trip." "And who has you working this time of night?" Flanagan grabbed another card out of his wallet and handed it over. It was gold with embossed lettering. The trooper looked at it and then back at Flanagan. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No, sir," Flanagan replied. "Ford Motor Car Company," the trooper read. "Special assistant to Henry Ford." "You've met Henry Ford?" "He's my boss." "Well, I'll be damned," the trooper said, impressed. "No wonder you're driving a roadster." Flanagan let the trooper in on a little secret. "Show that card to any Ford dealer and he'll take care of you if you want to get one for yourself." "I wish. Not on my salary." "I said he'll take care of you." Flanagan snapped, momentarily losing his patience. The trooper nodded and put the card in his wallet. He contemplated what to do next when the rain picked up and made his decision easy. "Get that headlight fixed, and you might want to look at the front wheel on the driver's side." "Looks a bit loose," the trooper said. "There's a 24-hour diner about 3 miles up the road. Right next to it is a garage run by a grumpy old Italian by the name of I'll bang on the door and he'll come out and fix your car." "Have a nice night, Mr. Flanagan." "You too, officer." The trooper was halfway back to his cruiser when another flash of lightning lit up the sky and he heard a young man's voice yell out, "He left me to die." "What was that?" the trooper asked, looking back. "Nothing," Flanagan said. "Just the radio." When the trooper was gone, Flanagan stared over at the spirit phone, the fear inside him bubbling up like a pot of his mother's stew. That was the third time he heard voices coming from the damn thing. How was that even possible? There were no such things as ghosts or spirits or even leprechauns for that matter. It was all a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. But the more Flanagan tried to convince himself there was nothing to worry about, the more anxious he became. Suddenly he felt exhausted, put his head in his hands and for the first time in a long time, started to cry. His sobbing was soon erupt. There, son, don't you cry," a woman's soothing voice said in a thick Gaelic accent. "Ma, is that you?" Flanagan asked. "Talk to me, Ma, I miss you so much." With tears in his eyes, he lifted the spirit phone out of the crate and set it in his lap. There was crackle of loud static. "What did you say, Ma?" Flanagan turned a large dial, desperate to hear his sweet mother's voice again. He honed in on a signal that sounded like it was coming from far, far away. "You killed your mother with your godless ways," came another voice, one that Flanagan thought he'd never hear again. "And now you're a murderer to boot. You're a disgrace as a son," his father shouted. Flanagan threw the spirit phone down, flung open the door and stumbled out of the car. "This isn't real," he told himself. "This can't be real." He took out a pack of Lucky Strikes from his coat pocket and lit up a smoke, his hands shaking like schoolboy on a first date. "This is nuts," he muttered to himself. The wind picked up and a chill rattled Flanagan to the bone. In the distance, a dog barked a long, lonely howl.
There were spirits in the night. Enough of this, Flanagan thought to himself. He was no coward. There was a job to do, and he was going to do it. When he got back into the Model A, the spirit phone was on the floor in front of the passenger seat, its cathode tubes dark as night. "If I hear one more thing coming out of you," Flanagan warned, "I'm shooting you to pieces." "Got that?" There was only silence. It was a little past 4 in the morning when Flanagan pulled into the parking lot of the Sunshine Diner. The spirit phone had been silent for the last 10 minutes, and he was convinced the voices he heard were all inside his head. A few years back, he had met some doughboys who fought in the trenches over in France, who swore they could still hear the sounds of battle. What he experienced was nothing more than auditory hallucinations brought on by fatigue, nothing a good night's sleep couldn't cure. Now all he had to do was get the car repaired and he could be on his way. A closed sign hung in the garage's window, but Flanagan banged loudly on the door anyways. After another couple of knocks, a light appeared in the second-floor apartment, and he heard the sound of heavy steps on the staircase. A moment later, the door swung open and a middle-aged man, wearing a bathrobe and looking half asleep, stared at Flanagan. "It's 4 in the morning, mister. We're closed. I need my wheel tightened and a new headlamp. We open at 8. Come back then," the man said. He went to shut the door, but Flanagan blocked it with his foot. "I'll pay you $20 if you do it now." The sleepy man stared at Flanagan and then at the $20 bill he was waving in his face. "Let me get my son. Give us an hour." The dusty and dim-lit diner was empty except for a bum sleeping in one of the booths and a tired-looking waitress killing time behind the counter. "Sit where you want, hun. Coffee?" "Please," Flanagan answered as he slumped into a booth near the window. The waitress brought over a pot of coffee and poured a cup. "Can I get you something to eat?" she asked. "Got some fresh biscuits coming out of the oven." Flanagan took a sip of the coffee. It tasted like dirt. "Give me a minute." The waitress nodded and drifted off, leaving Flanagan alone with his thoughts. The rain had stopped, and a ground fog as thick as cotton balls was rolling through the parking lot. It was a welcome sight. Flanagan figured he would be in Pennsylvania, maybe even Ohio, by the time the body by the side of the road was discovered. A transient like that wouldn't be missed. He probably did the poor bastard a favor. Flanagan looked at his watch. Not much longer now. He was anxious to get on the road, drive straight to Detroit, walk into Mr. Ford's office, and put that damn Spirit phone right on his desk. Then he never wanted to see it again. Ever. The waitress shuffled over with a hot pot of coffee. "Warm it up, sweetie?" she asked in a tired voice. "Please," Flanagan said, "and give me some of those biscuits." "You got it," the waitress replied, stifling a yawn. "Kind of surprised you got old Al to work on your car this late." "That's his job, right?" Flanagan replied. "Anyways, he said he was going to get his son to help him." "Good luck with that," the waitress said with a laugh. "He snuck off to his girlfriend's house about an hour ago." Flanagan stared at the waitress. "What's that?" "The boy snuck off to his girlfriend's place. Trust me, it's not the first time." "What kind of car was he driving?" Flanagan asked. "He wasn't driving," the waitress said. "Damn fool was on foot." Flanagan suddenly felt lightheaded and the color flushed from his face. "You okay, sweetie?" "I'll be fine. I think I just need some air." Flanagan got up from the booth and went outside, his heart beating double quick. The odds that the kid he hit with his car was the garage owner's son were remote. And even if he was, the man would never know unless... Flanagan had butterflies in his stomach as he slowly crossed the parking lot. There was a light on in the garage and he could hear the muffled sounds of a conversation. He breathed a little easier. The son was helping his dad work on the car. As he got closer, he could see the Model A up on a lift with its wheel off. Something else caught his eye. The Spirit phone was charged sitting on the workbench, its cathode rays glowing orange. "How much longer?" Flanagan asked, standing in the doorway. The garage owner said nothing. Outside, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a crash of thunder. The storm had returned. The hair on the back of Flanagan's neck stood up, and there was a tingle in his fingertips. "Hey, buddy, I said how much longer?" Another flash of lightning, and the man spoke in a low hush. "You left my son by the side of the road to die." "What's that?" "You hit him with your car, and now he's dead," the owner said, fighting back tears. "That's a lie," Flanagan protested. "Why do you think that?" The man turned around and was pointing a shotgun at Flanagan's chest. "Because he just told me." Flanagan reached inside his coat pocket and pulled out his gun, just as the garage owner was squeezing the trigger on his. There were 2 flashes of light followed by a couple of loud bangs. Flanagan stood motionless for a moment, then watched as the garage owner crumpled to the ground with a bullet in his forehead. He walked over to the man, knelt by his side, and saw that he was dead. "Damn fool," Flanagan cursed. "Why did you have to go and do that?" Suddenly, there was a thunderous boom of thunder, and the Spirit phone roared to life. its signal stronger than ever. "What have you done, dear?" his mother cried out from beyond the grave. "The son I know isn't a killer." Flanagan put his hands over his ears. "Shut up, Ma. Shut up. Don't talk to your mother that way, boy," his father shouted. "You're a bum, and you broke your mother's heart." "Be quiet, the both of you," Flanagan screamed. "I may not be a saint, but I'm nobody's fool either. I did what I had to do to put food on the table and money in my pocket." He raved like a man gone mad. "I wanted to make something of myself, not like the two of you." The spirit phone crackled and hissed, and Flanagan could hear his mother sobbing. Wherever she was, he had broken her heart once again. He pointed his gun at the spirit phone, ready to blow it back to hell, when there was a blast from another gun. Flanagan fell to his knees, blood spurting from the bullet hole in his back. He glanced over his shoulder and saw the waitress standing nearby, a smoking gun in her hand. She had heard the gunshots and rushed over to help the garage owner, who also happened to be her husband. With life fading from his eyes, Flanagan reached out towards the spirit phone. "Sorry, Mom," he muttered before collapsing face first onto the cold garage floor. State troopers descended on the diner shortly after the shooting. The distraught waitress described to authorities the nervous-looking man who sat alone. "There was something a little off about him," she said, anxiously puffing on a cigarette, "like he had just seen a ghost or something." The trooper that had stopped Flanagan earlier in the night personally arranged for the Model A to be towed back to Detroit in care of Mr. Henry Ford. That included all personal effects found in the car, including an envelope containing a sealed test tube. Nobody noticed the strange-looking radio on the workbench. That is, until Stevens arrived 20 minutes later. Edison's assistant was able to sneak off with it before anyone even knew it was gone. Stevens was happy to have the device back in his hands, although this wasn't exactly how he envisioned getting it. He never thought Flanagan would take it in the first place, especially after he tried to scare him with that phony Bologna story about hearing it work. Truth was, he had never heard anything but static come out of it. No one had. It was just another one of Edison's failed inventions. The real reason he didn't want Flanagan to take it was because he wanted to keep it for himself and sell it for a pretty penny. The one and only spirit phone created by the late, great Thomas Edison. What's the saying? There's a sucker born every minute. Stevens was halfway back to Glenmont when the rain picked up again. A bolt of lightning tore across the sky, followed by a crackle of thunder. The air was suddenly filled with static electricity. Inside the crate, the cathode tubes on the spirit phone flickered orange. "Nice night for a drive, isn't it?" Flanagan asked.